Data versus information. Data is a representation of a fact or an idea. Putting your name, putting your address, this graphic is actually a very good illustration of this. As opposed to information, which is organized, meaningful data, or putting out such as a college ID card. Bits versus bytes. You need to understand the language of computers. Bits are a binary digit. This is that binary language. A bit is a 0 or a 1. It can represent on or off, true or false, yes or no. If you put a string of these zeros and ones together, such as 8 of them, it would form what is known as a byte. A byte can represent every letter on your keyboard, whether it being uppercase or lowercase, every number, all characters, such as your ampersand, your pound sign, your dollar sign, or a percent sign. All of these are represented by a string of 8 zeros and ones. How much really is a byte? Well, remember, a byte can hold 1 character of data. A kilobyte can hold 1,024 bytes. It's basically about a half of a typewritten page when it's double-spaced. A megabyte can hold roughly 1 million bytes, or 1,000 times a kilobyte. A floppy disk can hold about 1.5 megabytes of data. We all remember those floppy drives. They're pretty much archaic now, but those are those square disks that you would put into your computer back in the older computers. A lot of things are still measured in megabytes. Older RAM chips were always measured in megabytes. You would have a 256 or a 512 RAM chip. Also, CDs are measured in megabytes. A CD roughly holds about 700 megabytes. A gigabyte is basically 1,000 megabytes, or 1 billion bytes. Now, a lot of things in the computer world are still measured in gigabytes today. A DVD holds roughly 4.5 gigabytes of information. A CD is not quite a gigabyte. Most RAM chips today hold at least 1 gigabyte of information. And your hard drive, almost always, is going to be measured by how many gigabytes or gigs it can hold. A terabyte is kind of a high-level end of data, but basically that holds about 1 trillion bytes. That is 1,000 gigabytes. For most computer users, they will never need to use a terabyte of information unless they're in high-end video and audio production. I'm not sure why they even list a petabyte. A petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. And pretty much the only thing I can think of that would actually use a petabyte with something probably like the YouTube or some kind of server that's holding a large amount of video data. There's 2 main things that it takes for a computer to work: software and hardware. Software are the programs that enable hardware to perform different tasks. Software is anything that is these intangible zeros and ones. It's this binary code, it's this data. There are 2 subsystems of software: system software and application software. When you turn on your computer and an operating system loads up, that is your system software. So that's your Windows Vista, your Windows XP, your Mac OS X. For you Linux users, your Linux. MS-DOS is also a very, very basic operating system. Application software are all the things that you use to get stuff done. That's the best way to really define application software. If I want to type a report, I have to open up Microsoft Word to type it. I'm getting stuff done. If I want to edit a photo, I'm going to open up Photoshop and edit that photo. I'm getting stuff done. So anything you go to the Start menu for to open up is pretty much application software. Hardware, on the other hand, is anything that you can physically touch and chuck at a wall. So in other words, all the things that you've been using for your input, output, storing, and processing of data is pretty much a piece of hardware. We're going to go over what each piece of hardware is right now. Let's talk about some kind of input devices. Input devices are loosely defined as devices that you use to enter information and instruction into the computer. So your keyboard, your mouse, your microphone, your scanners, your digital cameras, and your stylus are all types of input devices. The most common type of keyboard is the QWERTY keyboard. So the layout is standard on most PCs. Now there's also enhanced keyboards that will allow you to be able to control DVD functions and internet functions. They'll sometimes contain a numeric pad on them for you. But for the most part, the QWERTY keypad is the standard keypad in most computers. Ironically, the QWERTY keypad was invented to slow people down from typing because it was invented for typewriters. And it was meant to slow it down because people were typing too fast and the keys were getting jammed. So they're actually out there right now working on trying to find new keyboards to be able to allow people to type much faster, such as the Dvorak keyboard. It puts the most commonly used keys on the home keys. It reduces distance of finger stretches. There's also specialty keyboards. If you've ever seen a PDA or a tablet PC, you know you can touch the screen and input data. These kind of keyboards use what are called styluses. With these styluses, sometimes a screen will pop up that has a keyboard on it, and sometimes you could just use the stylus as the mouse. There's also notebook keyboards, which generally vary in shape and size depending on the size of the screen on the notebook. There's also wireless keyboards that use an infrared light or a Bluetooth ray, which is a radio wave, that will allow you to connect your computer wirelessly. Also, cell phones now are being developed to have keyboards in them. A mouse is a type of input device. There's a couple different types of mice. There's your standard rollerball mouse. This basically is a mouse that has a ball on the bottom of it that it tracked your motion across the mouse pad, and that is how you identified where the pointer was on the screen. Optical mouse do not need a mouse pad. They don't need to be cleaned, and they sometimes are more expensive. They basically send a ray of light onto the computer that reflects back to the mouse, and that is how the tracking on the screen works. A trackball mouse was developed to be easier on wrists. It stays stationary on the desk. In other words, you don't move the actual mouse around, you just move the ball with your thumb. And then there's wireless mice, which can be actually a trackball mouse, or a rollerball mouse, or an optical mouse. Some other input devices are scanners and digital cameras. Scanners are basically flatbeds that you can put a piece of paper or a picture on and be able to scan in your image. You can scan in text with some text reading softwares, and you can also scan in images and import them directly into your photo editing program. Digital cameras a lot of times can both take images and video. I suggest when you go out and buy a digital camera, you buy a camera specifically to be used for taking still images, and you buy a camera specifically used to take video. When you want to input sound, the best bet is to go with a microphone. Microphones are often used for podcasting, video conferencing, internet phone calls, which are becoming more and more popular, and speech recognition software for users who are physically impaired.